I'm Carolyn Holzman, and this is Confessions of an SEO. Don't worry, you've come across the least SEO podcast on the planet. There are no interviews, no FOMO, just a place to relax and feel okay that you're an SEO. That is, except for today's show. Just kidding. I just thought it was not just business owners that have to remind themselves that really Google doesn't know how to rank content. And even us as SEOs, we have to remember that. Welcome to Season 4, Episode 5 of Confessions of an SEO. I think I'm going to call it The Emperor with No Measurements. Now, before we get started, the annual Confessions of an SEO survey is open. It's a Survey Monkey thing, and I do it every year, and the free account has a limit of 40 responses. And I would love to get an email telling me that I have to upgrade. So here's your opportunity to share your feedback. Let me know that there's any topics that you would like to have covered. They can even be controversial. I don't care, because there are no protected interests here. There is nothing that cannot be questioned. So let's to take the survey, it's like less than 2 minutes. So if you have 2 minutes, this will also be in the show description below. It's a bit.ly link. So it's bit.ly/ and then COAS-survey3. All one word, all lowercase. And in case it sounds weird to your ear, the COAS is short for Confessions of an SEO. So now, if you listened to last week's show, it was all about an article from the developers of software that's called ziptie. You find it at ziptie.dev. And they have software that monitors the serving of content within SERPs. Right up my alley. Now, they call it indexing, but if you're a regular listener, you know, one of my many missions in my career is for us as an industry to adopt a more precise language around the process of indexation. Serving is what we normally mean when we use the word indexed. Now, side note, some colleagues think that this is a matter of opinion, what we call it. I do not. I think the question has been asked and answered, that if a page can't be found by its keywords, it's not being served. Indexed is what Search Console calls it once they've crawled it and inserted it into the index on their side. So serving is one of the indexation subsystems, and that's the one that's involved to show us what we can see. So content that can be in the index, but so far back in the documents, it may not show up in the top 100 or 200 results for a search term. So there. Anyhow, that software, the ziptie software, made it into my tools recommendation. The links, again, are going to be in the episode description. Now, in the same vein as last week's show, providing alternative explanations for things, I found an article published on Search Engine Journal. I'll put the link in. And basically, the title was Google Search Liaison gives 4 reasons why a web page couldn't rank. So you see now why that got my attention. I'm thinking we could perhaps glean some information. Now, personally, and as far as I know, none of us have seen Google show us a page that they optimized that was ranking. But getting their take on one like ours, well, you can see why I hot-tailed it over. Now, while the details of things like the URL weren't in the article, they can be found by going over to Twitter to the precise conversation that they wrote this article around, and you'll be able to find it too. There. Now, see, we're all SERP detectives going back to the scene of the crime to observe and ask questions. Now, it is not typical for someone from Google to lean over to such a precise question, to a live URL and actually look at it and actually give their responses. So I really give Danny Sullivan props for doing this. That said, just remember I'm an SEO and a forensic one at that. And I do have the ability to pull data from SERPs and look at things which are not my brain and they're not subject to my bias. But let's just realize that while the URL was looked at, it was looked at as a human, not as an algorithm, or I should say through an algorithm. Now, humans are great, right? I'm not complaining about that, but I'm just saying it's not a real audit, despite the article describing it as such. The feedback was a lot less precise, and it really bordered on more of a CRO response, conversion rate optimization. Okay, the site owner is clearly frustrated, and he asked for some help from Google. And in his question, which is the basis of this episode, does anyone have an explanation to why some of our articles are not showing up in the SERPs at all? I'll update the article with new information. It pops back in and ranks well, and then it disappears again. This is happening to lots of our great content. It's very frustrating. Sad face. Now, in the course of the comments, like I said, the URL was shared, so I looked at it, and then I read the feedback from Sullivan. And there were it's called four highlighted content issues. I'll read them back to you. Original content is not apparent, but they don't tell you how that's measured. Second, a lack of content that demonstrates experience. Again, how is that measured? 3, unsatisfying content. Well, how is that measured? And 4, stale content that doesn't deliver. I hate to sound like a broken record, but how the hell is that measured? Now, I'm very interested by what I'll have to say. There's no objective measurement in these findings. But he clearly read the article, and again, kudos to Danny. He shared his personal experience as a reader, but that is not the same as an objective set of objective measurements. And so for these 4 reasons, it's like, that's why your content isn't ranking. What? The problem I have with this is that the subjective feedback from someone on the inside of Google was taken, I guess, as chapter and verse on why the page was having issues staying served. See how I did that? Now, if Google on the inside sorted pages manually by having a Google employee read the content and decide where to place it in the SERPs, well, that would be hard for me to argue with. If that's how it was done and we got that kind of feedback, I don't know what I would do with it. I don't know I could do anything with it. But we know that's not how it's done, because even if, let's say, as humans we have bias, it's impossible to be reading billions of pages of content per day flooding into Google's indexation system. Because even if you could do it, that's not a reliable sorting system. So no, we know Google relies on algorithms to sort. That's why they call it a freaking algorithm. There is no human intervention. Now, looking at that feedback, that's why I say it's more CRO than SEO. So, okay, I'm not done there. So we're going to go a little longer. So I was still curious, and I was on the hunt to try and see what measurable reasons could explain why this page was having trouble. So I fired up Cora and used the title to guess what the search phrase was, and sure enough, their page wasn't in the results. But the cool thing about Cora is you can add the URL that you want to measure at the end for that collection of search results. Now, the report was interesting. And clearly, as I interpreted it, the math that was on that page was a lot closer than I expected to the math that was driving page 1 results. So, what else could I do? So then I thought, well, what if I adjust the keyword and take off the plural at the end of one of the nouns? Oh, and guess what I found? Okay, going back into Cora. When I went to add in the URL shared by the guy on Twitter, Cora told me there was another URL from the same domain, key factor there, that was already in the results for the topic of the page that couldn't stay served. You say. So now the next thing I want to do is I'm going to go look at that page. Well, and guess what? It is almost the exact same topic as the page that goes temporarily in and out using a related keyword, not a word for word identical match. Okay, it wasn't that. But basically, it was something that Google already understands means the same thing. So you have two keywords, you have two pages. One is focused around a specific keyword, and the other one is focused around something that means the same thing to Google. So it's almost like it's not a synonym necessarily the way you or I would consider it, but as far as a topic, Google understands that they are the same thing. Now, this is also, like looking at, well, when did these pages hit the SERPs, right? And I can't say for sure. The page dates may update auto-magically on the back end, but the page that's already in the results says it was published early January. And the one that is having trouble staying in the index was published in late January. So for me, I do a lot of consulting. This is starting to look like a familiar pattern that I have seen before many times. Now, it is always pretty clear when you get the server logs. So like I will isolate the date when the trouble page goes out, and then I'll back up 48 hours. And 99.9% of the time, somewhere within that time frame, the Googlebot re-renders the page that has trouble and the page that it serves. It is kind of like it redoes it. And, sometimes even I have encountered that there might be more than two pages on a site. So sometimes this is how I get to know a site, is I find that they've probably run 3 or 4 or 5 pages on the same thing. And it's all the same damn topic. Now, in this case, I didn't have the server logs, obviously, but I do have a browser. So using the site operator, and for those that aren't familiar with that, that's where you type in the word site, and then you do colon, and then you put in the domain name.com, then space, and then type in, some sort of keyword topic. And you can see what pages on that site that Google thinks are related to that topic. And when I did that, there it was staring at me. There was that other page. It was, they clearly are considered by Google to be on the same topic. And I would surmise, that basically this is what's going on. Now, when two pages are optimized so closely to each other, because mathematically they were very, very close, and obviously it's for the same term or a synonym, whatever you want to call it. It's like that scene in Star Trek, I, Mud episode, where the way to confuse the computer running the show was for Mr. Spock when talking with two identical twins, and, they're androids. He said he liked one of them, but he did not like the other. And since the computer knew they were identical in every way, it caused the computer to freeze. Now, that's not science fiction when it comes to Google. This is real. And every day I see this in consulting with client sites. The problem isn't with indexing, it's with the individual page's optimization. So it's not that Reddit stole your place. It's not that the content quality wasn't good. It's just not that, let's go back to the beginning. Original content is not apparent. It's not that. Or a lack of content that demonstrates experience, or unsatisfying content, or stale content that doesn't deliver. It's just that there are no ties in Google. These pages would appear to be cannibalizing each other. And I bet if this search term was tracked in something like Ahrefs, But honestly, who amongst us can afford Ahrefs these days? But if someone could, and they had the right plan, likely they would see the URLs switch in and out, especially after the troubled page maybe gets a little tweaking and starts ranking again, only to lose out to the original page. So, and again, if I'm reading the Cora report correctly, I would say it has to do with the entities, that the page that is currently ranking does a better job with and the number of entities than the trouble page is having. Now, that's something measurable. That's a possible explanation that would lead to the experience as described by the site holder. And I wager that this same issue involves other content that is also losing visibility. So in short, and this is for all of us, we all suffer in these cases by a totally unforced error. When we think Google ranks by the very specific keyword we choose, instead of one that fits into the way Google has organized the topic. It's completely understandable, and it's completely our own doing. I may do a video on this, not really to call anybody out, but just to point out from the forensic aspect of this, how to figure this out. You know, had I not found anything to signify two pages competing, well, then we'd have to look for other measurable factors. But as you can see, sometimes you have to go beyond the page you're trying to get fixed. And that brings us to the end of this episode. Please remember to take the survey. It's bit.ly/COAS-survey3. The link is in the description. And there are links to the tools that I use in my forensic work. The ones I recommend are Cora. And if you want to save 25% on a subscription, you can use that. There's also a Chrome plugin for use in Google Search Console. It's a Google Search Console tool. It takes some of the tedious manual activities we do in there and automates them. And now, of course, I mentioned before, check out ZipTie. And that's also a bit.ly link, bit.ly/check out ZipTie. Thank you to the supporters of Confessions. Thank you for being a listener. Keep coming back for this type of SEO content and stories. And certainly if you aren't too shocked by a little Google bashing. So if there's any topics you'd like me to cover in 2024, please take the survey. If you can't do that, let me know. You can email confessions@americanwaymedia.com or text confessions. Yes, there is actually a phone number. It is 737-225-8228. You can text your message there. Well, thanks again, and until next week, I'll see you in the SERPs.